Here we are.
So we call this portion of the podcast the filter in. So if you've got any jokes, we like to let people just hang out for the first couple of minutes before we actually start the podcast. This won't make it in the actual podcast. It only stays on the YouTube. It's a special treat for our YouTube people. You have any jokes?
Are you talking about me? Do I have any jokes?
Well, I don't know. CJ?
I feel
Some people just have them cooked up, ready to go.
I mean,
Yeah. What'd you do today? Anything good?
I just got back from the pool. It was freezing. You know my complaints about the Bay Area weather. San Francisco.
Yeah.
It is 54 degrees tonight in San Francisco with 18-mile-an-hour winds. We are in the middle of June. Mark Twain was right. That's my ultimate conclusion when he said that the coldest winter I ever spent was a summer in San Francisco. And I feel stupid and silly for getting mad about it. It's the dumbest thing in the world when you're mad at the weather.
There's nothing you can do. Well, Danica Patrick thinks that the government controls the weather with chemtrails. So
if only
you should talk to her. Yeah.
If only. That would be great. If we had any sort of ability to quickly control it. But no, I was just freezing, and my son, this is where the kids are stronger. In many ways, they are weaker than us as adults. And that can be frustrating, but they can handle cold and in the pool and temperature changes far better than we can. And I don't understand it, but I was dying in the pool as the wind was whipping, and I was just begging my 6-year-old, like, come on, I'll give you anything, any TV show, whatever, yeah, just anything. Like, can we just go, please? And he's just laughing, and no, I love it, and I'm just dying. Yeah, it was interesting. It was the first real feeling of him having a superior physical strength to me, and I just thought, oh, this is the rest of my life is going to be him going like this and me going like that. So it was a little bit of a preview.
Well, I just went to work, so
yeah. Oh yeah, that's fun.
How old's your son?
Oh, he's 6, and then I've got a 20-month-old. So yeah, they're adorable. They're very nice kids, but they're cliche, classic, wild young boys who are insane and bouncing off the walls. So it's nice to get a respite. It's nice. You don't want the respite to continue, but it's nice to get a little break to do whatever this is.
Well, someone in the chat says that because I'm platforming this right-wing scumbag, they will unfollow. So we are. So that's what you get for that's what you get for
typical Bay Area right-wing scumbag.
Yes, that's where they all migrate to. Yeah.
Although there is a vibe shift out here, which is interesting and not at all pertinent or germane to anything we're going to talk about. But yeah, that doesn't have much. Not have much to do with me.
No. All right, ready to go? Here we go.
Yep.
So I'll handle this part. Sure. Well, you can talk, as much as you want, obviously, but you don't have to worry about it until after the music. Mike doesn't. He has real dead eyes during this part, mostly just stares.
Oh, that's nice.
The Rights to Ricky Sanchez podcast is presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. Sign up for DraftKings Sportsbook by using promo code RTRS, and brought to you by Briggs Auction, the official auction of the Ricky at briggsauction.com. Big Barker Therapeutic Dog Beds. Get yours at bigbarker.com/Ricky, and Kinetic Skateboarding. Get 9.1% off your first order with promo code Dave Silver. On the show today, Sixers, believe it or not, are not the only shit show in the NBA. The Lakers have somehow turned their coach search into a complete embarrassment. But more interestingly, why does Woj have so much to do with it? Our friend Ethan Sherwood-Strauss from House of Strauss, oddly, the only one from House of Strauss, joins us to go deep into the drama between Woj and Shams. And then, if we have some time, Doc Rivers talks shit on Philly again, and Windy has a Paul George nugget. And oh, by the way, the Celtics are about to win a title. Oh, yeah. I did mention Kinetic Skateboarding. Love Kinetic. Saw these earlier today. The Kinetic, or the New Balance Vegan 440 V2s. Yeah, so you got to worry about leather if you're vegan, and New Balance is cool enough to make vegan versions of their skate shoes. And you can get these at Kinetic Skateboarding. They have an enormous selection of New Balance and Nikes and Converse and Vans that you can't get anywhere else. Go to kineticskateboarding.com and use code DaveSilver for 9.1% off your first order. And happy birthday to Stephen Etor from your son, Daniel. Daniel says you are the best dude he knows, raised you to be a Philly fan. And now as I'm typing this, he says, I'm actually wondering if that's bad parenting. Then told a bunch of great stories about his dad. So happy birthday, Stephen. Your son loves you so much, he emailed a podcast. Without any further ado, Amos and the chef.
We were right, y'all. We were right. Even when it went wrong, we were right. We was right, y'all. We were right. So say the name. Say the name. We were right, y'all. We were right. Even when it went wrong, we were right. We were right, y'all. We were right. So say the name. Say the name. Say the name.
Forever.
Welcome to the Rights to Ricky Sanchez podcast. I'm Spike Eskin, no Mike. Today, Ethan Sherwood-Strauss, the main Strauss at House of Strauss. How are you? Joins the pod for the first time ever. First Ricky appearance.
I just love that intro, man. That gets me going right there. I hate to break it to the people in the chat. I'm not a Sixers fan. I'm here enthusiastically. I wish you guys the best. I don't wish you ill, but from your perspective, I'm neither fish nor fowl. That intro though, that is fantastic. I've heard it before, but to see it, to see all the clips, to see it with the bell pregame.
Yeah.
Yeah. So good.
That is a CJ production. CJ did the video. Of course, the music is our friend Amos Lee and his musical director, Jaron Olewski. Amos actually sent me a text the other day, and he said something to the effect of, hey, dude, without question, we were definitely wrong. Like, we were not right. And I said, well, along the way, we've been right and wrong. And he's like, no, definitely, like, we were definitely wrong. So... So at the top, you can subscribe to Ethan's newsletter and the podcast at houseofstrauss.com. I am a subscriber. I am a proud subscriber even before I knew you all that well. You do great work. Bringing you on to talk to you about what is one of the more popular topics on your site, but I think one of the more interesting topics that you ever cover, and that is one Woj. And if I can summarize... Rather than summarize, tell me, so you wrote a really long post about, and by the way, Ethan does audio versions of all the posts too, so I actually listened to it in the car, but a really long post on the Dan Hurley, JJ Redick, Lakers, Woj, Shams thing. And it's interesting, and you what's it called? You sort of give a disclaimer that this is informed speculation. You are putting things together based on who you talk to and what you know. But if you don't mind, is it fair to have read or listened to what you said and summarize what could have happened as this? The Lakers were very interested in JJ Redick. JJ Redick was nervous that it would come out before the finals were over because it would piss off ESPN. That's a bad enemy to make. Then... what's his name? Somebody from the Lakers, Rob Pelinka, goes to Woj and says, hey, let's create a distraction so nobody pays attention to the JJ thing. Maybe we'll talk about Dan Hurley. Dan Hurley needs to get a raise anyway. Somewhere along the way, Woj decides he actually wants Dan Hurley to take the job, unbeknownst to maybe Dan Hurley and the Lakers. They make him an offer that is nowhere near what they need to offer him, so he says no. And then we wind up exactly where we are now with them pretending or Woj pretending that they're actually talking to JJ Redick now, all along the way, making everyone look stupid and weird except for Shams somehow, and maybe even risking the JJ Redick thing while that happened. Is that a fair assessment of what could have happened here?
That's a fair summary. And I'm not worried at all when we discuss this about giving too much away, because I put it behind the paywall, just because it's so convoluted and there's so many contours that I couldn't possibly give everything away. This is the dumbest, and yet it's something that I feel as though I almost needed a PhD to even come close to understanding. It is so tangled that I came away from it wondering what's happened with the NBA where it's this convoluted now and this hard to just figure out what's going on and why it's going on. I believe this all started, for instance, on June 4th when Gino Auriemma was given a lavish 5-year deal by UConn. That's the starting pistol of this. That combined with the Shams tweeting out that the Lakers were zeroing in on JJ Redick. Those two events should not be connected at all. We're talking about women's basketball and we're talking about the Los Angeles Lakers in the NBA. And yet it starts this collision course where Dan Hurley needs leverage. By the way, the epilogue is that he's doing a media tour today, which is another weird thing. He's been on so many programs, basically insisting that's the dumbest thing, that people think he needs leverage. I don't need leverage. And let me do another interview about how great a coach I am. And but I don't need leverage. I don't need leverage. And
well, he also said, in one of the interviews, Le Batard asked him if he talked to LeBron, and he said no. And like, how you just think, obviously LeBron or the Lakers at least want people to believe, or maybe that's even true now, that they don't need LeBron's permission to hire a coach. However, if they were actually serious, if they actually thought that they wanted him to accept the job, you would think that conversation would happen at some point.
Oh, I mean, he was blown away by the Laker offer, according to Woj, when they showed him everything. And despite that, he just had to come back, and he was so blown away that there was no counter offer, and he never had a conversation with LeBron James, the main guy who runs the Lakers. I mean, I could try to speed run it and go through this chronologically. You gave a summary. It's a good summary. It's your show, so you could tell me if this is the way to do it. I could try from memory to try to take us through this crazy Coen brothers film where all this stuff happened and absolutely nothing happened, and we're back at square one and everybody's embarrassed.
Well, can I ask just a general question first? Is why do you think, what advantage do NBA teams have or the league have to allow or even empower Adrian Wojnarowski to operate the way that he does, like empowering him in the way that they have? What gain is there? Or is this just agents? But I can't understand why this would even happen. Like why a reporter would think that he could will a coach into becoming the Lakers coach. Why is he in this position, do you think?
Well, I don't think for the collective it makes sense, but on an individual level, it makes sense. And a lot of general managers decide to do business with Woj because it's just easier. And he has something to offer them. He has information. Schefter operates the same way in the NFL, where if you're the most connected guy, then if I give you information when you need it to win the Twitter war, it's so silly that this is the main battle in media, but that's a separate topic, then you can help me. It's transactional. The transaction game is transactional. So I give you the info when there is a new trade or a free agent signing, and you will give me lavish praise on ESPN in exchange for that. And also maybe give me information on my rivals and adversaries that, they're really looking to draft this guy. Okay, well, I know that now, and that helps me from a general manager perspective. So I think that makes sense to a certain degree. It's just gotten to this place that I think is beyond Schefter. Schefter, for the most part, he will trade information and he wants to break the story first. Woj wants more. He wants influence. He wants power. And it's known that he's somebody who will introduce certain candidates to these owners, to GMs, people who are good with him, who can then give him the information first so he can win this battle against Shams, who has more players and more of the younger set. And my God, what a crazy movie this is. We're not even talking about how this is a classic student-teacher rivalry and that Woj had Shams as a protege and now they hate each other. And Shams is doing a victory lap on ESPN, dunking on Woj over how this is all gone. So, yeah, I think it makes sense on an individual level. For everybody involved, no. And I actually think that's why Pat McAfee was starting to get really subversive today on his show when he had Shams on. And he starts talking up all the qualities Shams has. And it's almost this little needling. And you can tell there's a little bit of he's saying the qualities that Shams has aren't so much the qualities that Woj has. And he's a good looking guy, guy just great on TV. And he's listing things and it's a little bit pointed. Because ESPN could probably have Shams do the Woj job without all this mess and drama for a lot cheaper. So if you take a step back, it doesn't make so much sense for him to have this level of elevation.
It also sounds psychotic almost. Woj does. To be quick, I don't think I've ever told this story on the podcast, but years ago, I mean, this was like year 3 of the Ricky. We didn't have sponsors, nothing. I mentioned on the podcast or tweeted or something that Woj didn't tag him. It was in passing that he never had any Sixers scoops ever. That nothing ever leaked out of the Sixers, front office. And I've never met him. I've never spoken to him. I got an email from him with a Word document listing all of the Sixers scoops he had. So that's psychotic. Right?
It doesn't surprise me. I should give more of a reaction, but it just doesn't surprise me at all. But yes.
So he seems and I understand being competitive. You have to be competitive in doing what he does, but he does seem vindictive and sort of crazy,
Yeah, I should give my own past with it because some person might point out that I have reason for sour grapes with Woj, so you can take whatever I say with a grain of salt. But my potential reason for sour grapes is illustrative of what we're talking about. So what a lot of people believe happened was that during the Warriors playoff run in 2017 at ESPN, when I was the main Warriors writer, and I wasn't making a tremendous amount of money, but I had 3 years of my deal left. I was fired when Woj was brought into ESPN to staff and run their NBA coverage. And the reason it happened, a lot of people believe, and we'll never know for sure, just like we'll never know aspects of this story for sure, is that when I was in my early 20s blogger on Warriors World, wrote a critical blog post about how he covered the LeBron James free agency back when LeBron was on Cleveland, and that this is something that he had always held on to. And I know he had held on to it because even though I was just some blogger on Warriors World, he DM'd me back then very angrily about the whole thing. Not with anything substantive, by the way. He obviously had an axe to grind against LeBron, and that had something to do with LeBron firing Leon Rose as an agent. And Woj and Leon Rose are very tight, and there's a CAA connection, but I don't want to get too far afield. So, that's an example of how you're dealt with. And I think it informs how this is just a broader media story where what's happened today, Spike, what's happened is hilarious. It's ridiculous. And do you see a bunch of media members openly laughing about it? Because I don't.
With Shams saying that, or with Woj saying that they're going to interview JJ Redick for the first time after acting like Dan Hurley was the focus for weeks, which he wasn't, and Shams already reporting that they were focusing on JJ Redick.
This dominated the NBA Finals coverage on ESPN. This was wall to wall. Here comes Danny Hurley with the Godfather offer. It was not a Godfather offer, by the way. I don't know do we have some sort of term we can use for when the offer is not a Godfather offer? Was it a Godfather? It was a Godfather Part 3 offer that Danny Hurley got.
Never seen any of the Godfathers, so
it's known as the bad one. I just know the critics think that. I don't actually have an opinion on the Godfather Part 3, but this whole story is insane, and they completely went wall to wall coverage with it. That this was going to happen and imminent, and what you thought with JJ Redick wasn't the case. He wasn't in it, blah, 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 blah. There was no Godfather offer. Danny Hurley didn't even counter. He rejected it nearly immediately. And I mean, this is funny. We should be able to laugh at this. If the UConn beat writer screwed something up like this, we would all be laughing and talking about it. But people know you're not going to get a job at ESPN NBA if you're laughing at this. This isn't something that is going to go well for you professionally. So it's just left to, I guess, independent media like yourself and some other people to really find it funny. This whole ludicrous situation with JJ Redick and ESPN and Woj. And yeah, it does. You got to give him credit. The willingness to be very vindictive and retributive does earn you a lot of silence when you have mishaps. I mean,
nobody feels like dealing with the annoyance of pissing him off.
I mean, yeah, I think that it does matter. It's done for a reason. I mean, true power might be, in some people's estimations, the ability to always get the story right. But I think true power, perhaps, is the ability to get the story massively wrong
and have nobody call you on it.
And have almost, nobody that important. I mean, you remember the James Harden trade, for instance. It was a situation very much like this one where he was wrong on television trying to put the toothpaste back in the tube after Windhorst said it. And it's just something that doesn't stick to him. I think he's still the leading brand in NBA news. And one of the reasons is that there is a cost if you're going to find it funny when these things go haywire.
Now you don't have to do this on yours because you're Mr. Paywall, but we have trusted partners at the Ricky. The Rights to Ricky Sanchez podcast is brought to you by Briggs Auction, the official auction of the process. It is time for CJ. Do you have the CJ item of the week? CJ's item of the week, Briggs Auction. Now the auction going on now is the Delaware County Historical Society auction, which is pretty cool, but a lot of weirdo items in there.
Yeah, a lot of weirdo items. Unfortunately, I do have a bit of a normie item, probably. We got a Creative Records. It's some classics, so there might be some good finds in here for someone. Specifically, what stood out to me, I really have been looking for whipped cream and other delights around Philly and haven't been able to find it, and it's in this lot. And there's a lot of other hits here that I'm sure I can get something out of, but specifically the Elvis Christmas album. Nice. The Bill Cosby one, probably not going to use that one.
Yeah.
But whipped cream, other delights, I've been looking for that, so this is the one.
Yeah, Briggs Auction, it's fun. I would check in every week. That's what I say. Download the app in the App Store or Google Play, or just go to briggsauction.com. They have another auction next week. First of all, there's the normal ones. There's the Discovery auctions and the Fine Estates auctions. But then there's the specialty ones, like this one from the Delaware County Historical Society. They've done a couple of different sports memorabilia and sneaker auctions. They had a Ricky listener bought a table from them and took it right to, what's that concert all the country people go to? Huge concert at the Link. It was last week. Maybe it's not country. It's not Jimmy Buffett, but it's kind of like Jimmy Buffett. You know what I'm talking about? Anyway, they took a table that they got there for their basement. They brought it right to the tailgate before, and Briggs Auction posted the picture of it. In any case, furniture you're not going to find anywhere else. Art you're not going to find anywhere else. Collectibles you're not going to find anywhere else. Go to briggsauction.com. Also, if you have to downsize, have a bunch of stuff that's probably worth some money, send an email to info@briggsauction.com. You can pick up your winnings on Saturdays for open pickup, make an appointment during the week, or they'll work with you on a shipper. Briggs Auction is the official auction of the Rights to Ricky Sanchez podcast. There we go. Now we're back.
Whew.
Yeah.
Smooth.
Yeah. So all right. So back to the JJ thing.
Oh yeah.
So just to do the timeline, is Shams reports that JJ. Well, actually, what's interesting what you said, just to go back for another second, about Gino Auriemma and him doing his deal, and nobody picked up on it for some reason. But when Zach Lowe and Brian Windhorst did their podcast after Game 1 of the finals, I think it was Game 1, Zach Lowe said Gino Auriemma stopped by. They didn't have the audio of it, and said, "I should have gone for the Cavs job so it could help me with my bargaining position here at UConn." Ha ha ha, and then walked away. And this was before Dan Hurley had turned down the Lakers job officially. So it was almost like Gino Auriemma knew exactly what Dan Hurley was doing, and nobody picked up on it that he said it. But in any case, so June 4th, is that when the Shams JJ Redick
June
story
4th.
comes out?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And he says that they're zeroing in on JJ Redick. Everyone laughs. But JJ Redick is doing the finals broadcast, and ESPN had just gotten burned by Doc Rivers, right?
Yes, the Doc aspect.
Okay, so who's the guy that's in charge of ESPN and would look stupid if this happened?
Dave Roberts, who is known to be highly aggressive and just a ball of angry energy.
Okay, so that comes out. So here's where it gets weird. And also JJ does an interview with ESPN Radio, I think. I forget who it was.
Golick and Gojo.
And they basically ask him about it, and he says something to the effect of, we'll deal with that after the finals or something like that, right?
He says Shams specifically, and he does not look happy. He does not look pleased about it. And he says something to the effect of, I will deal with Shams after the finals, which is a very strange thing, because if the report from Shams isn't true, then who cares?
Right.
If you're JJ and you're not going to get the job anyway, then whatever. You could just say that. Or if you don't want the job, you can just say that. But it seems like it's a problem. It's a little bit of a reveal that it's a problem that this report has come out.
So then, so here's where it gets murky, right? Because do you think that it is likely or possible that the Lakers went to Woj and said, let's stir up another rumor to distract people from the JJ thing so it doesn't get uncomfortable for him at ESPN?
That's a theory.
Okay.
That some people in the know have.
Okay.
The problem with the theory is it's one of these things where it's so stupid that I find it hard to believe, but it's the Lakers and it's this chaotic genie bus run operation. So I can't dismiss it out of hand, but that is what some people believe happened, that it's a Rob Pelinka smoke bomb of, well, this will clear up JJ's problem. And what is JJ's problem? Some people listening probably are going, well, why does JJ care if he's hired while he's on the broadcast? Why is that any kind of a big deal? And it gets a little bit interesting. Here we're now in the realm of Sixers characters that people are familiar with. Not only do you have Dave Roberts being very angry and on tilt because of Doc, but you also have JJ not liking Doc, that mutual animosity that's burbled to the surface. And JJ on that broadcast has not only replaced Doc, but it seems as though he's gone about it as the anti-Doc, and he's positioned himself that way. Doc was talking over Doris Burke all the time. JJ is obsequiously deferential to Doris Burke. And the people behind the scenes really like how JJ has gone about it and think he's been the good soldier. And he seems really into being the good soldier. And in part because that's not how Doc went about it. Doc had a lot of ego and he left everybody high and dry. So it seems as though sticking around, not causing trouble, not announcing that you're bailing when you're announcing the NBA Finals, that's all part of this. But maybe what we learn is that Doc Rivers, for all his flaws, is Doc Rivers for a reason. When there's a lucrative job to be had, he moves on it immediately. He doesn't care what bridges might be burned. And in the case of Doc, he's made a lot of money. He's had his coaching career. And not only that, but ESPN doesn't even talk about the Bucks. So if they're mad at him, it's not that big a deal. I think for JJ, there is the prospect if he takes this job, his first coaching job, and it's the Lakers, and Dave Roberts, the guy who runs content for NBA ESPN and seems to be a grudge holder. And I'm not saying that Dave Roberts threatened him, but it wouldn't shock me if it happened. That increases the pressure not to bail and not to be like Doc. So I think part of what happened here is JJ not trying to be like Doc is specifically a part of this story.
Okay, so then at some point, whether it's a diversion or not, Woj reports that the Lakers have been focused on Dan Hurley for weeks. Even though nobody has heard anything about it.
Secretly, for no reason. It's focused for weeks. Yes.
And also reveals that even though they've been focused on him for weeks, they have not yet talked to him or met with him in any way.
Yes. Yes,
okay.
Of course.
So let me ask you this. Aside from this being some sort of diversion, like what could this be? Could this be the Lakers get cold JJ feet? Could this be Woj says, I've got a guy for you? Like, what are the other options aside from diversion at that point?
Well, now we got to take a look at the Lakers.
Okay.
Because they are not well run. And I think it's very underrated how poorly run they are, in part because Jeannie Buss isn't inaccessible. And I think she's nice. And I think the people in LA and a lot of the media is in LA, a lot of ESPN is in LA, like talking with her. But I pulled this up from my article on the Lakers org structure, and I'll just read it because this might give you an indication because you're answering, what could this be? What could be the plan? My short version of it is you have so many chefs in that kitchen that one hand might not even know what the other hand is doing, or one person has the wheel and the next person grabs it. So from my old article, Laker decision-making officials would be Executive Director Special Projects Linda Rambis, Director of Basketball Affairs Kurt Rambis, her husband, President of Business Operations Tim Harris, who dated Jeannie Buss long ago, and General Manager Rob Pelinka. And that's the order of power as I understand it, and that's without the confounding variables of LeBron James, Rich Paul, and their Clutch Sports Group. And then there are a bunch of other people who aren't even maybe worth mentioning. So I think it's possible that there was a Rob Pelinka smoke bomb, and then maybe the Lakers had some conversations and were going, well, maybe we do want to do this. I don't know. It's a little bit blurry. It's a little bit fuzzy. It doesn't make sense because the offer that was given to Hurley was not competitive.
No.
I mean, he would have been the 6th highest paid coach. Woj was talking up Godfather offer, calling him, he said literally, by the way, Woj said literally the most sought after coach in basketball.
Yeah, we were hearing, I think the number that was floated out there, like $100 million.
Yeah.
And this was not $100 million. Right. Yeah. It
was 70. I got distracted because I saw people were debating my use of vocabulary. I was being a little pretentious. It is true. What are you going to do?
The chat'll keep you honest.
I got rattled.
Yeah.
I got rattled.
Yeah. CJ has seen me lose it before at somebody in the chat. Like I've had temper tantrums, so don't feel bad about it. Yeah,
it's okay. It's okay.
So
I'm a guest here. I'm trying to make a good impression. But
it's even possible that one group of people, like it within the Lakers, one group of leadership is looking at JJ. The other group of leadership thinks. And they're like, hey, let's do a smoke screen with Dan Hurley. Then somebody else within Lakers leadership says, oh, Dan Hurley, that's a good idea. We should actually hire him.
Yes, that's highly plausible that it goes down that way in Lakerland. It is a very chaotic operation where power is shared all over the place. And I could easily see it going that way to explain why something gets momentum. And who knows what conversations Woj and Pelinka are having. What is clear to me, though, I think, is that Woj really wanted this to happen. And this is part of why Woj is such a compelling character. It's because he's Machiavellian and dishonest, but he's so human that he can't help but be accidentally honest, and it comes through. The crazy thing to me is when he's on TV after this is all fallen apart, and he's mournfully talking about how Hurley might look back at all this with regret because this was the chance of a lifetime, which, by the way, nobody feels that way about the Laker head coaching job.
It's a horrible
job. It's a death sentence.
Yeah.
It's the star's 40 years old next season. What are we talking about?
It's a win now job where you can't win is what I've said on the pod before about that job. Like, and by the way, it's a horrible fit for Dan Hurley, who's like sort of a taskmaster and a yeller, and so in a bunch of vets, including LeBron. That's not who he should be coaching if he goes to the NBA.
Yeah, I mean, it's bizarre that Woj is editorializing about how there's so much regret over it. It's just so. so strange. And adding to the strangeness, I think, is today, Dan Hurley. I've never seen this before, Spike. Maybe you can remember something like this ever happening. Dan Hurley doing a media tour about how interested he was in this job that he turned down. He has been on Levitard. He has been on Cowherd. He has been on local media. He has been on New York media. He did a full car wash today talking about how it wasn't done just for leverage. It wasn't fake. It's the my interest in this job I didn't take wasn't fake tour. I've never seen that. And it's hard to explain it without thinking perhaps this is to help Woj out, because the aspect of this that I don't even think we talked about is that Woj is incredibly tight with Dan Hurley, and his best-selling book was sanctifying, canonizing Dan Hurley's father. So it is a tangled web of conflict of interest that I think starts with another conflict of interest, which is that Woj had to be pretty mad that JJ Redick's news was broken by Shams, because JJ Redick is inside the building at ESPN with Woj, and they're both out of CAA, and that matters a whole lot as to how the reporting gets done. So, we haven't even come close to summarizing this thing where nothing happened.
Well, and one more pause, because the Rights to Ricky Sanchez podcast is presented by our friends at DraftKings Sportsbook. Now, oddly, I obliterate JJ all the time, but JJ is a DraftKings guy. So we have that in common. But that is the only thing we have in common. And the tattoos and being annoying white podcasters. But aside from that, everything's different. So I'm actually looking at the line for Game 4. Are you, Ethan, have you looked at the line for the Game 4 of the NBA Finals?
I haven't. I'm distracted by the thought of how annoying JJ would be if he was a vegan, but I do want to know what the line is.
Well, Mike, if you were to guess, what would you guess?
God.
In Dallas.
It's in Dallas. I think I might have heard a little bit about this. I think it would be Dallas by 2.
So it's Dallas -1. I would have thought Boston -3.5 or something. That's actually shocking to me. So DraftKings, by the way, is a official sports betting partner of the NBA. You can go in this with a same game parlay. But by the way, and we haven't talked about the fact that this is like the final nail in every process Sixers fans' coffin, is the Celtics not only winning a championship, but sweeping a championship. You do same game parlay, and I was actually looking at the futures for next year. Sixers are plus 1,200 to win the title. Boston is favored at plus 280. And I just want to see what Drew Holiday is plus 7,500 to win the finals MVP, which would be also another nail in our coffin after we're already dead. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use code RTRS. That is code RTRS. Use it. New customers get $150 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Code RTRS, only at DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Got to be 21. See show notes for details. Okay, back to JJ. So Dan Hurley does all of the interviews, tries to make Woj look a little bit better. Woj is also mad that Dan Hurley didn't take the job. I suppose we could theorize that Dan Hurley went into it basically thinking, look, I don't think I'm going to take this, but if they offer me enough money, I'll take it. Is that's sort of where you put him on?
That's what he's representing to people. It's all these things that can't simultaneously be true, where it wasn't about the money. It was about the glorious Lakers history. But yeah, if they gave me enough money, I would go there. And no, I'm not trying to get leverage in my current contract negotiation with UConn. I've won 2 championships. That's leverage enough. But yet I'm flying to LA. This has lowered my estimation of Dan Hurley considerably, by the way. I looked at him purely as this is a genius coach who runs a killer program and seems very sharp. I didn't know much about him, and now I'm just watching this ridiculous show that he's putting on and going, yeah, I can see why UConn is playing hardball with you, buddy. You don't seem to have the most integrity around, despite the accomplishments. And yeah, today was a day where Woj put out that JJ Redick is effectively back in the lead for the Laker head coaching job. But unlike the previous days, there's no Woj on TV to talk about it. The only guy talking about it on ESPN is Shams, his main rival. So what a silly mess. What a silly mess, Spike.
And it looks like at the end of the day, they're just going to hire JJ Redick. Honestly.
Which is also kind of amazing. And so much has happened that we're not even talking about hiring a hipster podcaster as your head coach.
Yeah.
Again, he did play in the NBA for like 15 years and is on the main broadcast. And I don't think he should want this job, by the way.
I don't think so. Not if he wants to be a coach. He shouldn't want this job. And by the way, like saying, and this was the second time it happened, Shams said it once, and then Windy said it today, that his podcast with LeBron were basically his interview for the Lakers. And like the idea that the best quality to hire for a coach of like NBA stars is understanding how to describe plays on a podcast and not ego management and talent management and that sort of stuff, that it's like, oh, he knows plays or whatever, like is a fucking crazy thing to think that that's why you would want to hire somebody to be a coach, you know?
Yeah, you can have an assistant coach who is a genius at all of that. There's so much that goes into, and I felt like I learned a lot just covering the Warriors, watching Steve Kerr do it. And I'm not sure Kerr's got a pretty high approval rating. Maybe he's gotten the proper amount of credit. I know a lot of fans are frustrated with how the team has performed of late, but Kerr would say often that most of the job is outside of the game itself. That's most of the job. And frankly, a lot of it's just about manipulating people. They don't frame it that way because you're manipulating people towards a good end. You want them to be as productive as possible, but Kerr would collect all these little tricks of the trade. And I interviewed him about it. He went and he talked to a bunch of football coaches before he took the Warriors job. And he just had all these little motivational tricks that you could maybe dismiss it as, how can we even assess that? There's no analytics for it, but I like a lot of them. One of them is you bring an underperforming player in, and this was Parcells' trick. You bring an underperforming player in and you go, I guess I believe in you more than you do. That's what I'm seeing. It's unfortunate. I believe in you, but based on the way you're performing, you don't really feel that way. And that's just one way to give them the agency and to cut them down and tell them that they need to shape up without crushing their ego and still put the ball in their court, as it were. I'm starting to digress about all of this, but yeah, being a coach is a job where you're managing up, you're managing down. You've got to be willing to lose the job. That's a prerequisite that I've been told by coaching agents like Warren Legary. The only way to do the job and not get fired is to have the balls to go, yeah, if I get fired, I don't even care. Not everybody has that. That's I think quality that's important.
Yeah, I think as a general manager, same thing too. Like you start to see that's when general managers start to struggle, is when they're trying to save their job, you know, instead of doing the right thing all the time. Yeah, I agree. We've asked Daryl probably I think we've probably had Daryl on the podcast 8 times and probably asked him 3 different times, if you could have a coach who's really, really good at strategy or really, really good at managing egos, what would you rather have? And every time it's the managing egos part over the strategy part of it. And you know what? This might end up getting JJ more money. And I think from an ego standpoint, you said it's not a good job for him to take. From an ego standpoint, I think if you're him, that's why you want it. You don't want it because it's the right thing. You want it because I've told my bosses before, the best day of any job is the day the press release comes out. And then every day after that is worse. And it'll be a great press release day for JJ when he's named head coach of the Los Angeles Lakers. But then every day after that will be terrible.
Yeah. I'm surprised he doesn't want the plum job that he has as lead broadcaster for the NBA. But I think that might speak to how perhaps ESPN is even more of a viper's nest than the Lakers are, that you would want to leave it. Although I had Jason Timpf on and he said maybe JJ is just drawn to the competition of it the grind of the NBA lifestyle is addictive for the people who've done it. So maybe that's part of it. But to start your head coaching career off in this way at this place, I mean, I don't know. It seems like, credit to JJ, your favorite guy in the world. He was building himself a nice career there with the podcasting and with being on the lead announcing team.
Yeah. Credit to JJ. Well, Ethan, you've said before, you've told me before that your Woj pieces are the most successful on your website. So I pray for you for even more Woj pieces to lift up your career. Anything else you want to plug before I'm going to go do some Sixer stuff that you don't have to hang around for if you don't want, but
I might do a follow-up. I might do a follow-up on all this. The epilogue is funny with Shams on ESPN doing a victory lap and Dan Hurley all over TV talking about turning down the Lakers job. I think there's something to all of this to where I could do a part 2 and be pretty happy with it. I just enjoy the comedy of these being my most successful pieces, but none of my former colleagues sharing them. Right. I find to be very interesting and amusing, even if it all makes sense.
Well, if JJ does take the job, I've mentioned before on the pod, a former coworker of mine, Zach Gelb, said that we should fly out to his first press conference and ask him questions there. And I would just love to be one of the first few questions for JJ Redick at his opening press conference. JJ, Spike Eskin writes to Ricky Sanchez, how do you feel about being second choice to Dan Hurley? I would love that. It would be a great moment. So, all right, man. Well, thank you. houseofstrauss.com. Go sign up and subscribe and all that kind of stuff. I appreciate you, man. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
All right, man. So there he is, Ethan Strauss. So now it's just me. So I had a couple of other things I wanted to go over with you. I'm going to leave the Celtics stuff for Saturday's pod when Mike is here, because I think if I start talking about the Celtics stuff now, it's going to, without Mike, it's going to make it sound like I'm trying to rub past pods in Mike's face, but that isn't what I want to do. What I want to do is talk about how long our deficiency to the Celtics has gone. And why, again, and I know people were mad at me for wanting the Celtics to win this championship, but I think when you look back at it and you think about it more deeply, it'll become a little more obvious why I would want the Celtics to win this championship. Again, not because the Celtics winning makes me happy, but because I think the Sixers deserve the most possible shame, specifically the ownership. And specifically, I do believe that the Celtics winning will make these specific owners, specifically Josh Harris, more upset. So anyway, speaking of that, I'm not going to do that Celtic stuff. I want to do this thing, and then I want to talk about a windy thing. So Doc Rivers is doing podcasts with Bill Simmons now, I guess. He's on every once in a while, and he was on after Game 3, and this happened.
And I've asked people to understand it, especially Tatum. I can't explain it, but they play better on the road. And I don't really fully understand it, especially Tatum. I think he plays... think home, and I've asked people with the Celtics about this, like, why is Tatum better on the road than home? What are the reasons? And there's a bunch of it, right? When you're home, you're dealing with tickets for everybody. You're with your family. I'm preaching to the choir with you, though.
Yeah, but usually you play better at home. The only place that I thought it was difficult to play at home was in Philly because of the crowd, and I thought it affected our players some.
But I think this is the Tatum piece.
What the fuck is he talking about? This guy will do interviews for the next 25 years blaming anybody but himself for what happened in Philadelphia. The crowd at Sixers games, people make it like every crowd in Philadelphia is like 1988 vet crowds at an Eagles game on the 700 level. The crowds in Philadelphia for the Sixers were totally fucking fine. You see those clips on the internet every once in a while of like people will joke, hey, this is what Jokic and Luka had to deal with in their home country, and it's a basketball arena with flames coming up from the crowds, and it looks like a war there or something. That's not what Philadelphia looks like. And by the way, the Sixers played well at home before Doc was here, when Doc was here. I don't know. I know that Philadelphia is not like the number one place that basketball players want to play. Mostly in the NBA, they want to go to Los Angeles. They want to go to Miami, perhaps New York, perhaps Houston. Philadelphia is not high up on the list. But to say that players in Philadelphia played worse at home, first of all, because they were worried about the crowd, is objectively false. They didn't play worse at home. And this guy just won't stop fucking blaming other people for not succeeding in Philadelphia. Before we get to Paul George, the Rights Ricky Sanchez podcast is brought to you by Big Barker Therapeutic Dog Beds. In our bedroom right now, we have 2 Big Barkers in a row that I have to worry about stumbling on as I leave. 1 Big Barker we can fit on the floor. 2 Big Barkers next to each other, not good. Not both for Rebel. Rebel is sleeping on one of the Big Barkers, and now Scotchy, our foster, is sleeping on the other Big Barker. The reason that you should have your dog sleep on a Big Barker is because it keeps them healthier. You know, dogs are wonderful. Dogs are full of love. They're fun. They greet you when you get home. They'll lay with you when you're watching your favorite sporting event. And your job is to make sure that they are happy and healthy as possible. And a Big Barker dog bed will do that. Go to bigbarker.com/Ricky or go to the link in the description to get the Big Barker Therapeutic Dog Bed with the commemorative t-shirt. That one you have to go to the special link. If you go to bigbarker.com/Ricky, of course, you will get the Process Pup patches. How does it keep your dog healthier? Well, your dog sleeps a lot, just like you sleep. Your dog probably sleeps even more than you sleep. If you slept on a bad mattress, you would feel bad the next morning. If you slept on a bad mattress 2 nights in a row, you'd feel worse. What if you slept a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks? That is what is happening with your dog. The Big Barker Therapeutic Dog Bed is engineered by experts to keep your dog healthier. And I'm not even looking. Did we show the Process Pup? Look at this Process Pup. That's a new one. Wait a minute. What's this? Is this Miles? This is Miles holding the patch. That's a good looking dog. I don't know what kind of dog that is, but it's a good looking dog. In any case, engineered by experts to support your dog's joints, to keep your dog healthier. Dogs get arthritis just like people do. This will help stave off the effects of arthritis. It's proven with a study at Penn Vet. So go to bigbarker.com/Ricky. Small Big Barkers, the Barker Jr., giant Big Barkers for your bigger dogs. I'm telling you, Rebel has slept on a Big Barker now, I think for 6 years. And I swear this is true. We just had him. He's 10 years old, just had him for a checkup. And the doctor specifically said, no arthritis. He's getting along great. And look, some of it's genetics, obviously, but I think some of it is definitely for the Big Barker. Plus, when you put your dog on a Big Barker, make sure you send us a photo. We'll put them in the Process Pup gallery, just like Miles there. Big Barker comes with a 10-year warranty. The foam won't flatten or they'll replace it for free. A 1-year at-home trial. If you don't like it, if your dog doesn't like it, they will give you a full refund and they will even pay for the shipping. It's handmade in the USA. Big Barker dog beds. CJ, can you give me a woof at least?
Woof, woof, woof.
There you go. So we're almost at free agency time. Free agency starts June 30th. That's when you can start talking to each other. And obviously seems like the primary target for the Sixers is Paul George. Our friend Brian Windhorst, the Whisperer, was on with Pat McAfee and talked about the Paul George situation. And he mentioned something that is a little bit of interest considering what we think Paul George's options are. He hit that, CJ?
Free agency is a couple weeks away. Who are the biggest free agents going to be this summer in the NBA?
Yeah, so we're not 100% sure of who's going to opt out yet. So
LeBron.
Paul George LeBron's probably opting out. Paul George is an interesting guy to watch. So he has a player option in his contract. What happens with Paul George, I think, is going to ultimately really affect the market. So he's got 3 options, and his 3 options are going to be very interesting to watch around the draft because I think his decision is on June 29th. So option 1 is he opts out, becomes an unrestricted free agent. He can stay in LA. He can go anywhere. Okay. The 2 teams that are expected to have a serious look at him are the 76ers, who have opened up cap space to give him a max contract over $50 million to start, or the Orlando Magic, who are desperate need of scoring in their backcourt. And, they were a 5th place team in the East this year. They've got all their draft picks going forward. They got cap space. I would be surprised if he went there, but I'd also don't want to dismiss it. And then there's potential sign-in trades where they could do a deal with the Clippers. The other thing he could do is he could go to the Clippers and make what I would call the Chris Paul. The Chris Paul did with the Clippers like 7-8 years ago, when he said, here's what's going to happen. I'm either going to walk away for nothing, or you're going to trade me to where I want to be traded. And then he would opt into his contract, opt into that player option, get traded to a team. That way the Clippers could get assets back and then sign an extension with that new team when the time comes down the line. Or option 3, he could just he's free to extend his contract with the Clippers right now. There's nothing stopping him from doing that, and maybe he will. But obviously, he and the Clippers have swapped numbers, and they're not on the same page. So which one of those 3 options happens will be a big factor in the market, because if the 76ers get him, their cap space will be used up, and they'll be out of it. If they don't get him, where's the Sixers' money going? What are they going to do with it?
Caruso?
And not necessarily sign players. I think the actual big transactions this summer will be trades. Teams taking on salary in trades. Philly, potentially, if they don't get Paul George, trying to trade for guys into their cap space. Detroit has like $60 million in cap space, and they want to get better real fast. That's been,
get better. You guys might win 10 games next year.
Yeah, it'll be easy to get better. It'll be very easy to get better.
He's failed before. But I actually think that, so July 1st is when free agency starts, or I guess it's the night of June 30th. We may actually see the biggest action around the draft.
Okay.
The draft's the 26th, 2 weeks from today. That's the beginning of trade season, and who knows? You might see action with Paul George there, whether it's him getting traded somewhere or him just deciding to stay with the Clippers.
So the idea, most of what we've talked about with Paul George is the idea of him signing here or the Clippers giving him the money that he wants and him going back to the Clippers. The idea that there's somewhere else he wants to go and he would opt in and they would trade him there isn't something we've talked about very much. I know that the idea of him going back to Indiana, which I don't think is going to happen, or because I can't even imagine they could fit that, or going to Oklahoma City has been floated, and in that case it would be a sign and trade. But even if he wanted to go to Miami or he wanted to go to New York or something like that, like I think one thing that has kept us as positive as we are, or even when I asked Kevin O'Connor on WIP what he thought the chances were of Paul George going to Philadelphia, and he said 50-50, which I thought was high. Most of what we thought about is that Paul George doesn't have a lot of options because there's not a lot of teams with cap space. But the idea of him opting in to his 1 year left on his contract and then later signing an extension isn't something we've talked about a lot and makes me a little bit nervous. I just want to do one voicemail and one email, and then we'll get out of here because the email is about that. This comes from Michael, writes to RickySanchez@gmail.com. A competitive league like the NBA necessitates a zig while our competitors comfortably zag. We often choose not to defend ourselves against much of the criticism, largely in an effort to stay true to the ideal of having the longest view in the room. That is from Sam Hinkie, obviously. I can't help but think as we plunge into this offseason from his resignation letter, I can't help but think that as we plunge into this offseason that we may be about to make decisions that go against the teachings of our Lord and Savior. We keep talking about how Daryl Morey must do something this offseason, how we can't waste another year of Embiid's prime, and so on, which feels like we have the shortest view in the room, not the longest. If we hired Hinkie as GM today, what do you think he would do? I can't help but wonder if he might conclude that regaining the longest view would include trading the prince of the process. Please correct me if I've misinterpreted the sacred text. Non-basketball question, what is your favorite Crayola crayon color? Well, the first thing is, as far as that Daryl must do something this offseason, I think that's more about our psyche than it is about the basketball team. I think my guess is they look at Joel Embiid as being the next 2 to 3 years. And I don't think that we as a group could stomach an offseason that does not have the addition of players that give us a better chance of reaching a championship. And I also think, I know there's a general fear of Embiid asking out if the situation is not that good. I actually don't have that fear. I don't think Embiid is going to ask out. But I do think when you look back at the history of the shit show of the last 6 or 7 years, I do think at some point it just unravels. if you don't get something cohesive going in the right direction all at the same time. And while I think you could come in and say, you know, if I don't think that Daryl will make a wrong move this summer. I don't necessarily think that he will make a move that we all are excited about, but I don't think just because he doesn't get Paul George, I don't think he would invest in a player that he doesn't believe in. And I don't think that we are asking him to do that. I think when we say it's got to happen this offseason, it's sort of like, we don't want to fucking wait anymore. Nobody wants to fucking wait anymore. As far as trading Embiid and the idea of trading Joel being the right move, we've done this a bunch of times, but I can't help but do it again. What are you trading him for? And what do you feel like the situation is afterwards? Because the Philadelphia 76ers are not going to rebuild right now. They're not. 0% chance. And also, you don't build around a 6-foot guard. Like, think of, in the last 50 years, the number of championship teams that were centered, teams that won a title that were centered around a 6-foot guard. It doesn't happen. Even when you see Kyrie struggling in the finals, can you imagine Maxey being the primary offensive player against the Boston Celtics, where everybody's fucking 6'6" or 6'7" with 10-foot wingspans? That's why you don't build around 6-foot guards. Okay, so if we agree that then you're either trading Embiid for one of two things. One, being somebody who you think can be the best player on a championship team. Like, I don't know, make a list. Who in the NBA right now do you think you can trade Joel Embiid for that you think can be the best player on a championship team? It doesn't exist. Or you're trading him for a bunch of draft picks and young guys and you're rebuilding. And I can promise you the 76ers are not doing that. And you can always just rebuild after Joel Embiid is done. There's no advantage to rebuilding now. Could you get 5 draft picks? Yes, I guess you could get 5 draft picks. But we've seen how that goes. So I just don't think it's likely at all. And I also don't think it's the right move. Non-basketball question, what's your favorite Crayola crayon color? I don't know. I don't have one, I guess. Blue. And finally, voicemail to 833 Lickface.
Hey, this is Jack from New Jersey. How y'all doing? In reference to that caller who talked about like Embiid's lack of leadership qualities, I feel like we would be saying the same thing about Jokic if he hadn't won a championship. The guy spends his press conferences talking about horses and wanting to be in Serbia and then not really thinking of the NBA as anything else other than a job. And to that I say, it's cute when he says that. His like malaise or disinterest is very cute when he's won a championship. It would not be cute at all if he did not win a championship. And that's kind of the difference. Like, Jokic is not an alpha dog. I'm going to fucking like go out and win this game. His game doesn't work that way. He's not Michael Jordan, and he's not that type of leader. He's won a championship, so it's cool. Embiid would be, I swear to the fucking God, a beautiful media figure for his trolling, his shit talking online or on whatever, if he had won a championship. Because what would the narrative be? You know, that's just fucking Embiid's competitive mentality, all right? He's a fucking winner. He wants to get in your head, and he wants to make you cry on the insides, okay? And that's why he fucking wins. But he hasn't won. He's gotten injured. He may be overweight. I don't really like making comments. I don't care about the weight thing. But, like, that's, like, it's other real shit. Like, the leadership thing is so fake to me.
I think this is a cope. I'm sorry. The leadership thing is real. Other players on the team have said that he was not a leader before and he is now. You cannot be the best player on the team and not hang out with anybody on the team. You can't just keep it to yourself. I'm sure everybody will say, well, Kawhi did it. Okay, well, then name 5 others or name 3 others. He wasn't a great leader before, and I think that he's better now than he was, and I think that's a good thing. And what you're saying about, well, if he had won a championship, then everything he would do would be cute. Yes, but he hasn't won a championship. Not only has he not won a championship, he hasn't gotten past the second round. So like when you say real things, what are the real things? If you don't think leadership is real and you don't think what kind of shape he's in is real, then nothing is real. Of course his weight is a real thing. It doesn't, just because you say he is too heavy as a professional athlete doesn't mean that you're fat shaming someone. He's too heavy. His knees hurt all the time. He's injured. He's torn his meniscus 3 separate times. He's had 2 broken feet. He's too heavy. His game isn't even a power game anymore. So I understand not wanting to believe the criticisms of him, but he would obviously benefit from losing 20 pounds. And he knows he benefits from being a better leader. When they say be a better leader, I don't think they mean press conferences. I think they mean in the locker room. And he has to be better in the locker room. And I think he has been. All right. We'll be back. First of all, thanks to Ethan. Go to houseofstrauss.com to sign up for the newsletter. I think he does like 2 newsletters a week and then a pod or 2 a week. And I've been on a few times, and I think he writes in a way that other people don't write. You know, I think when you work for yourself and you don't have a big company to worry about, you can write a takedown of Woj and nobody can come and get you. And it allows him to be more honest and be more interesting. And I think he does that. So thank you to Ethan for coming on. We will be back with Mike Saturday morning, I think 9. Yeah. CJ, is it 9 o'clock? 9 a.m. on Saturday because he's still in New York. So, all right. We will talk to you this weekend. Go Celtics. Are you down with TTP?
Yeah, look face.